So while we're waiting for everyone to show up, I'll answer some of the questions that went out before I started this video that came in between yesterday and today. One of the questions was the comment that burning candles is as bad as smoking, and whether or not that's true, and basically why, or if yes, why. And in a nutshell, it's a little yes and a lot of no. There are organic emissions associated with burning candles, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but they're nowhere near the levels that exist in burning cigarettes. The most comparable metric to cigarette burning is particulate matter, which we'll also talk about. And for particulate matter, it is possible to get higher concentrations from candles than from cigarette smoke. And like I said, we'll be talking in more detail about that. And so in that sense, burning a candle is worse for your health than smoking. But the real danger from cigarettes is not the smoke, like the particulate matter in the smoke. It's the actual chemicals that are in that smoke. And so there's over 5,000 different chemicals in cigarette smoke. Of those, 500 are specifically identified as possible contributors to adverse health effects. And there's nearly 100 that are verified carcinogens and major contributors to adverse health effects. So by far, cigarette smoking is a lot worse for your health than inhaling candle smoke. So I would not continue, I would not say to another person that burning candles is as bad as smoking. If you burn like 30 candles in your house day in and day out for your entire life, probably you're going to have worse health effects than if you occasionally smoked a cigarette, but that's kind of an extreme example. There's another aspect to burning cigarettes that no one really talks about, but there's, in the pesticides they use for farming tobacco, there's a compound called radium, and that's actually radioactive. That will radioactively decay into a different element called polonium, which is also radioactive, and it will emit something called an alpha particle, which you might as well take a shotgun to the cells on the inside of your lungs if you're going to inhale polonium. So that's really not something you want to expose your body to. So that's smoking versus candle burning. So incense versus candle burning. I'll briefly talk about this, but if you want to learn more about this, I really suggest you go into the sources that I provide in the link. Incense burning is way worse for you than candle burning. Like, if you had to pick between the two, burn a candle, don't burn incense. And if you could pick between burning a candle and diffusing oils, diffuse the oils. Incense might actually be worse for you than smoking cigarettes, just because it has so many more organic compounds associated with it. There's a lot of research that has linked burning incense to childhood leukemia and lots of other really nasty diseases, especially in children. And so, yeah, don't equivocate burning candles and incense. Incense is way worse. There's one of the sources I provided is burning candles and incense as air pollutants, and so you can go read that. There's a whole like chapter to the paper that talks about burning incense, and so I would encourage you to go read that if you want to find out more. One last thing, so there's actually a lot of recommended maintenance if you're going to burn a candle. This is from the Yankee website, Yankee Candle website, safety tips. You want to make sure you place your candle on a protected heat-resistant dry surface. You have to keep your wick trimmed to 1/8 of an inch at all times. And we'll talk about why they're telling you to do that. If smoking, blow out the candle. We'll talk about that. You have to trim the wicks, remove the wick trimmings, and then relight. Keep the wax pool free of the wick trimmings, and make sure matches and combustible material do not get into the wax pool. And avoid burning candles in drafts, and never leave a burning candle unattended. So all that's associated basically with this concept, what we'll talk about with particulate matter. But like I said, we'll go into that in a lot more detail. My goal for this is to keep this to about 20 minutes so we can have some time for some Q&A in the comments if you want more questions addressed. But this is the first time I've done this, so if I go a little more than 20 minutes, don't sue me, because, yeah, it's Facebook. All right, so introduction. I'm going to talk to you about three main points. One, candles are not good for your health. Two, diffusing essential oils are good for your health. And three, diffusing essential oils is cheaper than burning candles. So a little background on who I am. I'm Samuel Gravel. I'm the husband to Vanessa Gravel, who's pretty much always been my inspiration for healthier living. She's upgraded me in more ways than I can count in terms of how well I take care of my body. I'm an engineer by trade. I have a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering with a minor in Electrical Engineering. Currently, I'm a naval officer, and I'm making my way through the training pipeline to become a naval nuclear engineer. I started off with essential oils being a very big skeptic, and I had to do a lot of research in order to get on board with this idea of essential oils and that these tiny little compounds could actually have a pretty significant impact on your body and how it handles itself and various things. All right, so why I'm doing this, especially since this is pretty uncharacteristic of me to do something like this, it's mostly because after I was poking around trying to find different information about why candles might be bad for you or why diffusing oils might be better for you, I actually found there's a lot of information. This has been investigated for a very long time and in pretty significant detail. If you read through the sources that I provide, like, it's dry. So, you know, beware, you might fall asleep if you try and read some of those. And it's a lot of information. It's directly from the source. So people that ran test procedures and gathered like all kinds of crazy data on candle smoke. Who knew? But this data and information didn't come from like Jane's Healthy Blog.blogspot, right? This is directly from the source. And so some of the reasons to believe what I'm about to talk to you about, every piece of information that I'm going to present to you is verifiable in the sources that I will provide. I'm merely just a messenger of compiled data, and there's nothing new here. Candles have been investigated for adverse health effects for like almost 200 years. Even people like Michael Faraday, who had lots of discoveries in the field of electromagnetics, like investigated candle burning and incomplete combustion and gave numerous lectures on that back when he was alive in the early half of the 1800s. But one of the new aspects in our society today is this growing trend of people checking labels and proactively trying to live healthier lives. And this mass investigation by the population has created an entire industry of products that are developed to satisfy this need. But kind of a spoiler alert is oils have been around for thousands of years. Jesus got frankincense after he was born. Frankincense is an essential oil. It has incredible properties to it. People have been using aromatherapy practices and oils. Oils have been valued throughout time. And in our society today, it's actually never been easier, no matter what kind of income you might live at or where in the societal ladder you might sit, to be able to get a hold of these precious little compounds called essential oils. So they're pretty much like God's gift in nature to all of mankind, because our bodies were designed to absorb these chemicals, and they can do a lot with them. We're not going to go into that so much. We're going to talk more about candles, but just as a kind of background on essential oils, like it's not some new snake juice that came out. This stuff has been around for a long time. All right, so I'm going to talk about the three main points, and first main point is going to be candles are not good for your health. You might be thinking, because everyone uses candles and everyone gets cancer, then what's the big deal? Like, what gives? The chief emission from a candle, what it produces, is particulate matter, and that manifests itself in two ways. There's organic and inorganic emissions. So an inorganic emission is comprised of metals and elemental carbon, and elemental carbon makes up the vast majority of inorganic emissions. And then there's the organic emissions that are mostly generated from basically random compounds, like organic compounds that are formed from burning the candle wax and the wick, but mostly from burning the fragrances. And that's why we'll talk about it more with the incense. When you burn a fragrance, when you burn that volatile oil, you are taking that really complicated compound for that volatile oil, and you're reorganizing it and possibly creating something that is really bad for your body. And so we'll talk about some of those you get from candles. If you want to learn about incense, you can look at the reference. Yeah, and just remember that if you think that incense is going to be a good substitute to burning candles, you're probably going to shoot yourself in the foot. So the EPA has established air standards for air quality. They created something called the Air Quality Index, or AQI, that monitors a number of different parameters. The one we're concerned with is particulate matter, which, as we said, is comprised of organic and inorganic compounds. Particulate matter is kind of what it sounds like. It's tiny little particles that get emitted. These are on the nanoscale level, right? On the billionths of meters kind of size. So you think about maybe like 100 times smaller than the width of a human hair. Like, that's the size of particles we're talking about. And they can coagulate into different size particles, but they always are talked about in terms of what they call their associated aerodynamic diameter. And basically what that is, it's an equivalent size as if that particle were a perfect sphere. That's how they're basically talked about, is this concept of an aerodynamic diameter. And we'll talk about that in terms of microns. And a micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter in size. If you want, you can Google candle soot electron microscope images, and you'll get lots of images of what this soot actually looks like. I provided one of those pictures in the reference, and also posted the same picture in the discussion for this event. So the air quality index is divided into 6 categories. There's good, moderate, unhealthy for sensitive groups, which includes people with lung disease, asthma, bronchitis, emphysema, children, the elderly, and people with heart disease. So that's your sensitive groups. Number 4 is your unhealthy groups, or it's unhealthy for all groups. 5 is very unhealthy, and 6 is hazardous. So we're going to talk in terms of these categories. I'll give you some numbers too, but I'll be categorizing the numbers that we get so you can kind of get an idea of where these fall on the air quality index. The units associated with particulate matter is in micrograms per cubic meter. Now, I'll give you an example of how you can picture that unit, right? So if you can go to your kitchen, if you have a tile floor, most tile floors have 12 by 12 tiles, right? You imagine a box that covers 3 tiles by 3 tile box on the floor, and then imagine a box that's as tall as 3 tiles, right? So you have 3 tiles by 3 tiles by 3 tiles for length, width, and height. Now, if you put a charcoal brick in the center of your imaginary box, that cube with the charcoal is mostly carbon, right, has about 180 million micrograms per cubic meter in it. That box has about 180 million micrograms per cubic meter. We're not going to talk in terms of millions of micrograms. We're going to talk more in terms of like hundreds or thousands. But just to give you an idea, these are extremely small particles. They're not particles you're necessarily going to be able to see unless you're looking directly at the candle as it's burning. You might see some smoke coming off of it. But you're not going to feel it in the air. You're not going to feel it going into your lungs. You're just going to build up, slowly build up more and more adverse side effects from this candle smoke over time. So how much particulate matter gets released into an air from a candle? As I talk about these candles, basically talking about in terms of if you burn candles on a regular basis. If you burn 1 candle in your life, you're not going to really get adverse health effects. But if you burn candles on a regular basis, you continuously expose yourself to high levels of particulate matter, you're going to start having adverse health effects. The EPA's standard for clean ambient air is less than 12 micrograms per cubic meter. All right, so in terms of numbers, you need to remember, right? Remember 12 when we talk about all these other numbers, and whether it's bigger than 12 or smaller than 12 in terms of whether or not you have clean air. There's resources in the links that I provide that you can look at ambient air for your region and general area. I would recommend you look at that. The national average for clean ambient air is about 8 micrograms per cubic meter. Yeah, if you're above 8, like, your air is dirtier than outside air, basically. So additionally, particulate matter concentrations is at 2.5 microns and 10 microns stay very consistent with each other when it comes to candle soot. So that indicates that the vast majority of emissions from candle smoke is below 2.5 microns. And experiments have shown that the majority of those particles are actually between about 0.1 and 1 microns. We'll talk about why that's important in a couple minutes. Right, so 2.5 microns and 10 microns are what the air quality index measures to categorize particulate matter. But the particulate matter, the majority of particulate matter that gets emitted from candles is actually less than 1 micron. All right, so specifically for candles, right? So for a paraffin candle, your average concentration for particulate matter from a single paraffin candle with an aroma is up to 15.8 micrograms per cubic meter. That's if you have a single candle in a room with like the best combustion circumstances, you're going to raise the particulate matter in that room up to 15.8 micrograms per cubic meter. So by EPA standards, your air is no longer clean. However, if you have multiple candles burning and it's non-ideal burning conditions, then your concentration can go all the way up to 1100 micrograms per cubic meter. And that's a concentration that falls into the very unhealthy category of the air quality index. So, technically, like the EPA should be regulating your home's air if you're going to burn multiple candles and have your AC running. And then just a smoldering paraffin candle, after being extinguished, will raise concentrations to 250 micrograms. So if you like it, basically it's better it's better if you have ideal burning conditions to light a candle and burn it completely until it's all the way out than to light it, extinguish it a bunch of times. Because when you extinguish it, you blow it out, all that smoldering from the wick releases more particulate matter into the air and raises concentrations up to 250 micrograms per cubic meter. Even if you go for a healthier option like a beeswax candle, you're still going to get, under ideal circumstances with one candle, you're going to get 4 micrograms per cubic meter increase in particulate matter content, and then it's going to increase to over 30 if you blow it out. If you have a sooting or smoldering candle, it's always going to produce more particulate matter due to the non-ideal burning conditions. Right, so I brought it up when we started, this idea of non-ideal burning conditions and sooting and smoldering. What does that mean? Basically, ideal burning conditions is going to involve a perfect mixture of oxygen for complete combustion, perfect purity in the candle wax and wick, perfect air circulation to provide oxygen and not disturb the flame. So basically, that's no home that's ever existed ever in the history of humanity. So the idea that you can get ideal burning through a candle and not adversely affect the air quality in your home is an extremely remote idea. But why is this particulate matter so bad, right? So it's in the air, but we breathe a lot of stuff every day, so why is it so bad for us? It's mostly composed of elemental carbon. So if you want to talk about more about carbon, you can go to your periodic table. It's element 6. We're basically talking about a bunch of those in extremely small particles. Coals comprise mostly of carbon. And chronic inhalation and ingestion of carbon has been shown to cause pulmonary disease in humans and possibly skin cancer if it also contains aromatic compounds called PAHs, and we'll talk about those. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Agency, standards for carbon concentrations is 3,500 micrograms per cubic meter. Right, so if you remember, right, non-ideal burning circumstances, multiple candles reaches 1,100. Right, so the OSHA requirement is only 3 times more than what you would be putting in your own home from burning a couple of candles. And so if you have multiple candles burning throughout your house, you've got your air running, your filters in your heater and your air conditioning are not filtering out these particles, right? You're just circulating it throughout your house. You're likely raising the concentration of your entire home, possibly above these standards. And really what that means is OSHA, the same people that regulate like industrial parks should be regulating your home's air, which is kind of crazy to think about. And the requirements by OSHA is that you use respirators that are Mine Safety and Health Administration Agency approved. And they even, quote, say, use of respirators is the least preferred method of controlling exposure, right? In terms of like not exposing yourself or keeping yourself safe from carbon dust, you just shouldn't be exposed in the first place. So next thing to note is size matters, right? So like obviously if you have a piece of coal sitting on your table, it's not going to really hurt you same way as if all that coal was floating around in the air. Or if you tried to eat a lump of coal, you're not going to get the same adverse health effects as if you inhaled tons of tiny little particles of it. But if you remember what I said, I talked about how most particulates from candle burning are between 0.1 and 1 microns in diameter. And without going into detail, that's more of an average. You can look at specific particle sizes in the sources I provided, but concentrations as high as 40 micrograms per cubic meter are produced from a normally burning candle at sizes below 1 micron, below 0.1 microns, right? So that's less than 100 nanometers in size, and these concentrations are produced at up to 40 micrograms per cubic meter. If a particle is less than 0.1 microns in size, it's considered an ultrafine particulate, right? So if you want to Google ultrafine particulates, right, they're going to use this reference of less than 0.1 microns. Research has shown that ultrafine particulates at concentrations of 10 micrograms per cubic meter, right? So remember we talked about candles can produce 40 micrograms, right? At 10 micrograms per cubic meter, it's had the following health effects. It can affect white blood cell concentrations, right? It was showed in a short-term study. It didn't affect your overall white blood cell count, but the number of particular blood cells varied as a result of being exposed to these particulates. And basically what it showed is that activated white blood cells get attacked basically by these particulates, and they're not allowed to be flushed out of your lungs, and they basically just stay like trapped. And it also showed constriction in pulmonary blood vessels. Even had evidence that suggested the particulates affected the individual's heart rates that were tested. And that was for people that were asthmatic as well as healthy individuals. There's really no distinguishing between the two. All right, so that's particulate matter, right? Now let's talk about organic emissions. There's very little investigation into the composition of organic emissions for candles, right? Organics emissions are looked at for like car exhaust, smoking, lots of other more obviously bad for you emissions, but no one's really done a deep dive into organic emissions from candles. There's been some, but it's a little sparse. So the compounds I'm about to talk about, they are produced in candles. The reported data on these compounds does not show that they exceed the EPA and OSHA standards for these compounds. However, that doesn't necessarily make them good for you. So we'll go ahead and go through them. There's 5 of them that I'm going to talk to you about. There's something called acetaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen, formaldehyde, also a known carcinogen, naphthalene, which is a possible carcinogen and also has been shown to cause cataracts, dioxins, which are a highly toxic carcinogen, and this thing called PAH is a polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. It's a class of compounds that are well known for being carcinogenic. Those PAHs are chiefly a result of burning the fragrance. And so, like I said, fragrance candles, part of how it produces that fragrance is it's combusting that fragrance. And basically, the way you get a scent off of a candle is you light the wick. The wick melts the pool of wax around it. Some of that trapped fragrance in the wax gets emitted from the wax pool, but some of it wicks up into the wick and burns off along with the wax and the wick itself. And so that combustion, right? Combustion is a very violent chemical reaction. Even though your candle sits there kind of quietly all by itself, there's a pretty violent chemical reaction going on there where like atoms and molecules are exchanging all kinds of stuff, and everything's being reorganized and changed, right? And the fragrances, because they're already very complex, fragrances are very complex, small little compounds, right? It's not the same as a fatty oil like vegetable oil, right? These very complex fragrances get recombined in various ways that can turn out to be very bad for you, such as a polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. So each study performing measurements for the content of these compounds did not clearly identify the cancer risk for candles as being low in spite of their presence, right? So that's my kind of, quotation that even though you didn't go above the limit, each study didn't exactly say, yeah, but we made sure that the concentrations of all these chemicals were completely safe with no adverse health effects. All they did was report, like, we found these compounds and these concentrations from candle smoke. All right, so that's part number one, right? Why candles are bad for you. Candles are verifiably bad for you, right? There is pages upon pages of data and research showing that candles are bad for your health. There is no benefit, unless you just have to have that particular fragrance from a candle. There is no benefit from burning a candle. You will degrade your health. So point number two is diffusing essential oils is good for your health. And why is that? Your sense of smell is something called olfaction. Your olfactory system sends signals to 5 different parts of your brain that pertain to everything from your sense of taste to your limbic system, which controls your emotions. Right? So odor is sensed by the odor molecule binding with receptors in your nasal cavity. Right? So you inhale, those particles go through your nose, they enter your nasal cavity, they go up into your olfactory system, which is right about here. There's receptors that, there's a specific receptor for every odor that you smell, right? Like each receptor can only bind with one odor, and you have trillions of these receptors, up to trillions has been estimated. So it binds with that receptor, it sends an electrical signal to basically like a glob of nerve endings that basically reprogram that signal into something your brain can interpret and then send that signal to your brain, right? But basically your sense of smell goes directly into your brain. It doesn't go to the nerve bundle in the back of your spinal cord like touch or something like that. Like it goes directly to 5 different parts of your brain and basically immediately affects your brain. So I guess how does that relate to essential oils, right? Is an essential oil, when you inhale it, that fragrance goes into your nose, your olfactory system reacts to it, and you immediately get signal sent into your brain, right? So you don't have to ingest the oil, metabolize it, get it absorbed in your blood, have the blood go to your brain, and then your brain has a reaction. It's not even like it, your body doesn't have to metabolize it, doesn't have to absorb it. You don't even, even if you inject it into your artery, it would still have to circulate through your body and go up to your brain. So the fastest way to get a response from your brain from these oils is to inhale it and have that aroma react with your olfactory system and send signals into your brain. And so since your limbic system is basically the emotion center of the brain, it's directly connected to your olfactory system. It's basically no wonder that if you snort crack cocaine, you're going to have insane neurological effects almost instantaneously, because all those drugs are interacting with your olfactory system and immediately affecting your brain. Your body doesn't have to absorb it in the same way as maybe a traditional drug, right? But that's an extreme example. But it kind of proves the point that compounds don't need to be absorbed in your bloodstream to affect your physiology in your body. But it may be easy to brush off the concept of aromatherapy or that the mere inhalation of a scent can have verifiable and quantitative effects on your mental state, but it is in fact true. It's a little sparse with essential oils because the actual components of those oils varies depending on who produces it, which is one of the reasons why Young Living is as great as they are, because they have complete control over every aspect of the oil production. But the data that's out there shows that the major constituents of most of these oils, they verifiably do what they're supposed to do, right? And I'll let you go to Google. I'll let you do the research on that. We're not really going to get into specific oils and what they do. The data's out there. You can go look at it. Essential oils are very different from fatty oils, such as vegetable oils or coconut oils, because instead of having long oil chains, essential oils are comprised of many different smaller oil compounds that are volatile, right? And this word volatile basically means that they'll turn to vapor at room temperature. And so diffusing essential oils it speeds up that process of vaporization, okay? Because it ultrasonically vaporizes water containing the essential oils, and some amount of that oil leaves with the water vapor and is thus diffused into the air. And how it does that, there's a little element, right? If you take any diffuser, you take it off, there's going to be a little element that's about the size of a nickel. And that element is going to vibrate very quickly, more than you can see or feel or hear. And as it contracts, it creates a vacuum under the liquid that will that lowers the vapor pressure and basically boils that water at room temperature. And since that occurs very rapidly, tens of thousands of times a second, you can't hear it, and the vapor gets a chance to escape the water before it recondenses back into liquid, right? So it gets carried off, it takes some of the oil with it, and then you inhale it and you can smell that oil. Now, that's why essential oils are good for your health, right? Why diffusing essential oils is good for your health, because you inhale it, your body reacts to it almost immediately, and using a diffuser gets that oil into the air faster. Diffusers were developed in the 90s, and so this whole idea of diffusing essential oils is a relatively new concept, even though oil application and aromatherapy has been around for a very long time. All right, so third point, right, and this is basically the point that made me decide, I gotta teach this class, because I would have thought that, if you're gonna get some sort of health benefit from something, you gotta pay more to get more, right? But it's really not like that with essential oils. I was blown away that you actually save not a little bit of money, but a lot of money by diffusing essential oils instead of burning candles. It costs about 2 to 10 times more money to burn a candle than to diffuse essential oils, just across the board, right? Doesn't matter if it's a cheap fragrance or an expensive fragrance. It is so cheap, so much cheaper to diffuse essential oils rather than burning candles, right? So if for no other reason, right, diffuse essential oils to save your wallet. All right, so I got a few examples here, right? You can check my math on this, right? There's a Excel document that has all the math worked out in the sources that I'll give you. So check my math, make sure it's right. But comparing a cheaper fragrance like cedar, right? I like cedarwood essential oil. Young Living 15 milliliters of cedarwood costs $11.25. And you can get approximately 240 hours of diffusing time from that 15 milliliters. The equivalent cost to get the same burn time and cedar fragrance from a Yankee candle is $96, right? So you can pay $11 or $96 to get the same fragrance for the same amount of time. Or if you go to a more expensive fragrance like frankincense, a Young Living 15 milliliter bottle of frankincense gives you, again, about 240 hours of diffusing time, but that costs about $73. The equivalent cost for the same burn time of frankincense Yankee candles is $219, right? So you're literally talking about 3 times as much money to get a high quality fragrance like frankincense, to burn it in a candle and degrade your health, or you can diffuse it in a diffuser. And not only that, there's 1,000 other applications for frankincense. So you can't rub a frankincense candle on your skin and get health benefits from it, but you can from frankincense oil. All right, so example number 3, and that's going to kind of start our wrap up here. The premium starter kit from Young Living versus the cheapest Yankee candle fragrance, which is balsam cedar. The Young Living premium starter kit gets you 180 hours approximately of diffusing time, right? And that costs $160. The equivalent cost to get the same burn time in Yankee candles is $352. Plus, in the premium starter kit, you get more expensive oils like frankincense. All right, so to recap, candles are verifiably bad for your health. Essential oils are a completely non-toxic, beneficial, and healthy alternative to getting a sweet-smelling home. And essential oils are significantly cheaper than candles. In every aspect, you should throw your candles away and switch to a diffuser and essential oils. Now, I bring up Young Living because they have, from what I can tell, the best quality oils that you can buy for the money. And if you, become a member, you get the premium starter kit. Even if all you did was get a premium starter kit, you're getting like such a deal on the oils that come with it. You're not going to get the same deal really anywhere else. And the world of essential oils is very expansive, right? If you go to the vitamin shop, or if you go to any website and try and look at specific oils, which ones you want to buy, like it can be a little daunting to be like, which one should I get? Because you don't want to waste your money either, right? The Young Living Premium Start Kit provides you the most commonly used oils, as well as some of the costlier ones like frankincense, all of which you can apply topically or diffuse, and some are packaged for ingestion as well. It comes with everything you need to get started, including a diffuser, usage guides, and additional sample packets for some of the other products. So I'm going to provide a sample or a sign-up link in the comments and in the description for this video and the event as a whole. So you can go to that if the Premium Start Kit is something you're interested in, if diffusing essential oils is something you're interested in, if saving money is something that you're interested in, go and look at how to sign up. It's easy. You're going to save money, and you're going to improve your health. All right, so like I said, I'm going to provide a link to the sources. I highly encourage you to go check them out and make sure I'm not full of crap. And I just want to thank everyone for attending this event. I hope you got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of doing the research for preparing for this event, and I intend on doing more classes like this to dig deeper into the whys on when it comes to essential oils. I'll stick around for a few minutes if you have specific questions for what we talked about with candles and particulate matter or organic compounds. I'll stick around for a few minutes if you want to ask some questions. I'll field those in the comments, so just leave it in the comments. I'll look for that and try and answer your question.